Hey, what's up everybody? Garrett Rumley here with D2T. I wanted to talk to you today about how to store your gun properly, what condition to store it in, and whether or not to store it in a safe or not. So let's just jump right into that. So the first thing you have to think about when you buy a gun is, are you going to store it in a safe or not? And the real only thing you have to think about is, do you have kids or do you not? If you don't have kids, you can do one or the other. It's up to you. If you do have kids, you have to put it in a safe. You have to. There's no question about it. You don't put it up on a shelf. You don't stick it in a drawer. You don't put it out of reach. You put it in a safe so they are unable to access it, period, end of story. If you live alone, if you live with a friend, people that you trust, and people who are knowledgeable about guns, someone that you trust wholeheartedly not to abuse the ability to gain access to your gun, then it's just your own personal preference, but you're responsible for your gun. So if there's any inclination at all that someone might be able to gain access to your gun, lock it up. If you live out in the middle of the woods and you're like, you know what, I don't need a gun, or I don't need a safe rather, then it's up to you. So let's now go over how to store your gun and what condition to store it in and the pros and cons of each. Okay, the first condition, fourth condition, is condition 4, and that's just totally unloaded. And that means that I would then have to, like in a defensive shooting situation, my gun is totally unloaded. There's no magazine, there's no round in the chamber. I literally store my pistol like this. And as a beginner, this might be the most comfortable way for you to store your gun, because you might not want it to be loaded, like you have kids in the house. And a lot of people will say like, oh, that's really bad for defensive situations, and it is. But you have to be comfortable with your gun. A lot of people don't get a gun because they're uncomfortable. And if you're not comfortable having a loaded gun in your house, it's better to have a gun in your house. And you can store it. You can store it like this, right? Everything in the same lockbox, just like that. And that way, you can practice racking it, and getting really good with the muscle memory that you need to defend yourself quickly with that pistol, even if it's unloaded. So that's the first way to do it. If you're really new to guns and it makes you nervous to even have a loaded gun, you can store it that way. You can also, if you're really, really nervous, you can store your pistol in one safe and your magazine in another safe. And that's even worse for a defensive situation, because then you're going to have to go into one lockbox, go into another one. But if you're not really worried about someone breaking your house, if you don't live in like a high crime area, but you're kind of worried about like government and all that stuff, then you can, having everything kind of separate but still easily accessible is maybe the route that you want to go. The number one thing that I would say for condition 4, so totally unloaded gun, is it's better than nothing, right? Don't let people make you feel bad about what makes you comfortable with a gun. This is far better than nothing. And if someone's like, oh, that's not good for a defensive situation, you do what makes you feel comfortable. Don't ever let somebody pressure you into storing your pistol or buying a pistol or doing anything with a pistol that makes you feel uncomfortable. If this is how you have to store your pistol, gun in one box, magazine in another, then that's totally fine. It's not great for a defensive situation, but you need to be comfortable as a gun owner with your gun. Otherwise, you're never going to progress. And the more you use your gun, the more you get comfortable with it, the more confidence you'll get. And then you can store your weapon. Condition 3, moving on. So let's get into condition 3. So condition 3 is just magazine inserted. This is how I store my pistol. I have 2 kids in the house. It makes my wife a little nervous to have a condition 1 weapon where it is like totally loaded. There's a round in the chamber and everything. So this is how I store my pistol. I personally think that there's a lot more benefit to having a condition 1 totally loaded pistol when you're carrying, because then someone could come up like behind you. But in your house, I have an alarm system on my house. If anyone breaks into my house, I'm going to know it. I'm going to have like that extra second. And so this is just like one last fail-safe for me to, make sure that if anything were to ever happen, and I always store my guns. I always store my guns in a safe, or someplace that's locked up, a safe. But if for any reason my children were ever able to access my gun, then right now at 6 and 4, they would not be able to load it. It's really hard to pull this back for a 6 and a 4-year-old. So for right now, it's just one last fail-safe for me. And for me personally, I'm like, why not? Why not have one last fail-safe? And some people might say, well, if you lock up your guns, probably that's not a problem. It's like, okay, fair enough. But it makes me comfortable. It makes my wife comfortable. And again, don't be ashamed of like storing your gun in a way that makes you feel comfortable. So this is condition 3. It's better for defensive situations, far better. It's only slightly worse than condition 1 because all I'd have to do, go like that, and I'm good to go. Like, it's really, really quick, and there's not a whole lot to think about. You just have to make sure you train loading your gun, you know, because in my course, I need to make another video about this, but, you know, I kind of just practice dry firing. But one thing you have to do if you're going to store your pistol condition 3 is train the muscle memory to every time you pick up your gun, loading it and then shooting. Because in the moment, if you're really like in a high stress situation, defensive shooting situation, real life, you might forget to do that if you don't train that. So it's one more thing to think about, which is a downside to this method of storage, but not the worst thing in the world, as long as you train properly. So that's condition 3. And condition 1 is just totally loaded. So magazine inserted, round in chamber, stick it in, lock it, and then that way, you know, enter your code, open it up, and you can just fire. Okay? So, all right, so this is obviously the best for a defensive shooting situation. It's one less thing to think about. It makes a lot of new shooters very nervous to have it this way. I've been shooting for a really long time. I still keep my weapon condition 3 when I store it at home. So, you know, it's up to you. You know, pick whichever one of these is the best option for you. And there are pros and cons. So if somebody ever says, you know, oh, that's not great for a defensive shooting situation, they're right. If you store it like condition 4, totally unloaded, they're right. But what's worse is you feeling uncomfortable in your house day in and day out and never really gaining confidence because you're just constantly nervous about having a loaded gun in your house. So don't let people make you feel bad about the way that you store your gun. Be confident in your decision. Really just think about like what's best for you. And I would say if you can store at condition 3, there's a huge benefit to at least condition 3. And if you can kind of get over that hump, then great. But if you can't, then that's totally fine. The one thing about condition 1 is that there's no room for error. So if it's totally loaded, magazine inserted, round in chamber, there's no room for error. Like if you pick it up, pull the trigger, you know, and you do that by accident or you forget that it's loaded, it's going off. So if you're new to guns and you're not very confident in your skills, then, you know, if you don't have really good trigger discipline, right, you don't always keep your fingers straight off the trigger, don't keep your weapon condition 1 because you're likely to make a mistake. And it might be like, you know, a 10% chance or a 5% chance. But a 5% chance of making a mistake with a pistol is a way higher chance than what you want. You know, people who are very, very skilled, I mean, everybody has a chance, a possibility of making a mistake with a pistol, but, you know, people who are really, really skilled, know what they're doing, been training for a really long time, their chances of making a mistake are, you know, 0.0002%. You know, it's very, very rare for a skilled pistol shooter to make a mistake like that. So, think about what you want to do what makes you feel comfortable. Don't let anybody make you feel bad about your decision. Be confident in your decision, and that will lead to confidence with a pistol. So until next time, stay safe, live free. That's how you store your gun. And if you have any questions, email me at support@d2train.com, and I will see you next time. See ya.